Hi, Brigitte. Can you hear me at all? Okay. I can't hear you at all, so I'm not sure if our audience is able to hear you. And it seems like there's a bit of a lag, a terrible lag.
I'm not sure if you can actually hear me or
Now,
not.
now I can hear you. Now I can hear you. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if our audience had that warm welcome.
Well, let's just welcome everyone again and excuse all the technical glitches. The internet is what the internet is. It's one of those things that we can't always control. And I can see there's a terrible lag. So, again, a warm welcome if you're watching us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. We're on day 15 of the lockdown in South Africa, and big news was yesterday the president's announcement that the lockdown is extended by a further 2 weeks beyond the initial lockdown period of 21 days.
Yes.
Now, my personal sense is that it's the right thing to have done. The impact on business, the impact on education, the impact on South Africa is no doubt going to be a huge one. Viola, what is your sense?
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks. I have a very strong sense about it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think he's showing incredible leadership, really strong leadership. It's not an easy decision to have taken, and I don't think it's a decision that he or the cabinet have taken lightly. I actually do believe that they've given it a lot of thought, and it's really a case of we've done so well over these last 15 days. I know the president spoke about our infection rate having decreased down to 4% every day from I can't even recall what the first few days what the infection rate was like. And I think the main reason for him, making such a strong decision to extend the lockdown as it currently is for another 14 days is mainly because we've all worked so hard and sacrificed so much and gained so much momentum that if after 21 days we lifted the lockdown, all that might just be for naught. So I think it's a wise decision. I also believe that it's a decision that's going to have incredible consequences and consequences for our economy and for South Africa as a whole. Yeah, but I strongly believe it was the right thing to do. I'm not quite sure what the alternatives were. I think one of the comments he made that I found very interesting was that even after this, the sense I got is that after the extension of another 2 weeks, that there would only be a sort of phasing in um, of sort of lifting up of regulations around the lockdown, and not just okay guys, lockdown's over, everything goes back to normal.
I do believe that I agree with you. I don't think the decision was taken lightly given our economic situation, given the immense poverty that we have in our country. Most of our population are very, very poor people living in densely populated areas. So I can understand this must have taken a lot of forethought, knowing that it's going to cause economic hardships for many people. But one has to weigh up the economic hardships versus lives. How do you put a value to people's lives?
Absolutely.
It's a very, very tough call. And one thing I think, I spoke to an HR consultant today, and the consultant mentioned something rather interesting with regards to the property market. Now, I have spoken to someone in the property market in Canada, for example, and I would imagine it's fairly similar here. She was very upbeat about it, but the feedback that I got today, not from someone in the property market per se, but someone in HR, was saying that even prior to the lockdown, when people got the sense of how serious COVID-19 is, people who had their properties on the market were not wanting to do house showings. They didn't want agents in their homes. They didn't want people, coming through their properties. And so that market apparently started slowing down long before the lockdown already happened.
Okay.
And so the lockdown came, and agents were now working and thinking, well, we'll get the paperwork done. As soon as lockdown's over, we can then just sort of seal the deal. It does turn out that a lot of people, because of the economic situation with regards to the lockdown, have withdrawn their properties from the market.
Yes.
And so a lot of these agents who are, generally speaking, reliant on commission are now in trouble because the properties they thought they had in the bag and that they could finish all the paperwork on in this period, people have now withdrawn. I don't know what the legalities are behind that, but it is business unusual, and things are being done in a very unusual way. We're all being asked to not stick to the letter of the law.
Yeah.
So
I
difficult
I
one.
I think the property industry is one of many industries. I mean, one of the things that I think it was Tamsin was talking about, the fact that, they're sort of moseying along and doing all the paperwork. And, once lockdown's done, people will then just go and view properties. But I think the longer the lockdown stays in place, the less there's, the chance of you actually buying property at the end of all of this is going to, just become a very slim chance of that. I also think of people who have been, sort of putting their properties out for Airbnb for the tourist sector, for example. Lots of people sort of jumped onto that Airbnb bandwagon, bought, properties, and are now, were sort of doing really well, and now are stuck with another property with a bond on that property that they have to service, without the Airbnb income, and now trying to find a tenant is going to be incredibly difficult. So you are stuck with a second bond. So I think the property industry is one of many industries where I really don't think we've even started to see the fallout of the coronavirus and the whole lockdown scenario. I do believe, Brigitte, though, that um, it is what it is, and I think people need to understand that, and think people need to understand that you're not alone. It's a little different when you if you had lost your job 2 years ago and you're the only person that's lost your job and you're struggling to try and make ends meet, and you're trying to negotiate with the banks because you can't service your bond. I think what's happening now is all financial institutions are aware that there are going to be people sending them emails, and very much what you sort of said in the show, don't put your head in the sand, contact your banker, speak to your banker, speak to the people where you have loans, and just say to them, due to this, what arrangement can we make in terms of my loan or my bond? So there's a lot that I don't even think we've started to think about. I think everybody, if you just stop them in the street, everybody would have a very unique story to tell about the concerns they have around this economy now.
And I think, one thing we mustn't underestimate is also the fact that people with mental health challenges, how they may respond to the fact that they are now, that the lockdown has been extended. And I think this is where we can show acts of kindness by making sure we make contact with those people. And we don't always know if people have mental health challenges, especially in the workplace. And that's why it becomes more and more important as the lockdown is extended that we check in on one another. It doesn't mean that you have to be nosy, but it simply
Yeah,
means a simple hello, a simple, I'm thinking of you can make the huge difference.
absolutely.
Just maintain those contacts.
Yeah,
If you can't make a call, send them an SMS, send them a WhatsApp, send them on Messenger, check their Facebook status. If somebody's suddenly disappearing off social media, it's a flag.
yeah,
Then make an effort and contact them and find out if they're okay. Just say, look, I haven't seen you on social media for 2-3 days. Are you okay? How can I help?
yeah,
Without being overly nosy, but just check on people. The other thing that was significant for me about the president's announcement yesterday was the fact that he and some of the ministers are taking a pay cut for 3 months, and he's also implored others to follow suit. What do you think of
Absolutely.
that gesture?
I was completely overwhelmed by it. I think considering the the previous regime and they just became synonymous with corruption and greed, to now suddenly have leadership that are prepared to make these kinds of sacrifices. And I know the premiers have joined them as well, and everybody's been called to actually contribute to the Solidarity Fund. I was just, I was just so proudly South African and applauded him just for that level of leadership. So I am so excited about, just this opportunity where he has really come to the fore. Our president's been great. My big concern, of course, is who's going to administer the Solidarity Fund. They need to get a neutral party, an experienced party to actually take care of the administration of those funds. I also believe that it's going to be quite important for us to get here. And this is one of the things I wanted to just sort of put forward for us, is the idea of actually forming support groups, online support groups. Now, I know with WhatsApp, for example, you can do quite a few people on the same call. And that's a tool that all of us know. If there's 3 or 4 of you that are single moms, or 3 or 4 of you that have lost your job, or just some of you, I'm just looking at the message we got now, 3 or 4 of you, if you know that you've been evicted, just start talking to each other and start getting information and start working together to get the best kind of information, and to just sort of arm yourselves with information. I really believe that those kinds of small support groups are going to become so important to people.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to become a total lifeline for people. Now, it would be interesting to see the president did make a call to other business executives on that level to also consider taking a pay cut, and it'll be interesting to see who follows suit. The other thing I was considering thinking about that was how many people taking a pay cut for the next 3 months as opposed to possibly being retrenched.
Yeah,
If you're watching the show and you are in that, well, we're all in this together. If the offer was made to you to rather take a pay cut for the next 3 or 4 months as opposed to being retrenched, which way would you go? How would you, if your best friend came to you and said, this is the situation, how would you advise them? Do you think that that's an option we should look at? Now, just a reminder, this is business unusual. This is not a
yeah,
normal thing. Under normal
yeah,
circumstances, if a company said to you, I'm going to cut your pay for the next 4 months, you'd say, cheers, I'll get another job. But this is an unusual circumstance. It's either that or possibly get retrenched. And at this point, I'm not sure that companies even have the funds to pay retrenchment packages.
correct, correct.
That's the kind of feedback that I'm getting. So it's kind of retrenched and there's no money. You lucky if you got anything
Yeah,
or will get anything the end of this month. It is
yeah,
what it is. It's business unusual.
yeah. Look,
So
I, I can't see labor allowing that. Honestly, I can't see the labor unions, the trade unions allowing that. I know at one stage when the economy was doing really badly at the chamber, we spoke about that. We started discussing that, if we started speaking to, sort of, I think basically surveying workers and saying to workers, if you had a choice of losing your job or everybody takes a pay cut of 10% or whatever the percentage was, could we do that survey? And trade unions were just not okay to do that. So especially if you're part of a bargaining council, I don't know how that would be allowed. But I do think that as employees, in smaller businesses especially, if you were to go to your boss and say to him, what, we've discussed it as a group, and we recognize that it's going to be a really tough time, so that none of us lose our jobs, we are all prepared to take a pay cut of X%. I think those kinds of initiatives are going to become so important in the next few months, for people to just take initiative and to just understand that it is an incredibly difficult, stressful, just an incredibly difficult time. People, please, if we can, get together and let's just see how we can actually be working together to make sure that as many of us come out of this thing with our heads up as possible. It's just so difficult. It's such a difficult time for everyone.
And my concern is still at this point, we still have communities that are not taking this seriously. And I think that's part of the, possibly one of the considerations that the president took in making this decision was, to give us more time to implore people to get on the bus and be supportive and realize that this is a serious matter. And I think he's also trying to protect the vulnerable communities more so. We've seen a slowdown. You did mention in the beginning when we had some issues with the sound. I think it's gone down from something like 40% roughly to 4%,
Correct.
which is great. But the feedback is that we haven't done sufficient testing to know the real figures. And
But
so I
that
think the next phase seemed to be that they're ramping up the testing now to make sure that our figures are in fact correct.
Absolutely, and that's actually the comment that he made. He said that's another reason for the extension is that there's a lot more work that needs to be done. A lot more research has got to go into this so that we can have a true understanding, like a really good picture of where South Africa's at in terms of the coronavirus and its effects on us as a population and an economy. And so, when you sit down and you think about the reasons he offered for the extension of the lockdown, it absolutely makes sense. I know that it's going to be, and also just in terms of the plan, the one thing I've appreciated about the president is that at no stage did he stand up and just say, this is what the decision we've made. He's always coupled it with a plan, and he's got this 3-point plan that he discussed with the nation yesterday. And I'm feeling extremely confident that, if we can all work together, we'll get through this. The plan was quite, I think, succinct. There was a lot of, I know that he did say there's a lot of sort of work for his cabinet to do to make that plan work. But Brigitte, I do believe that, this whole active citizenry is what's really going to come into play right now.
Talking about citizenry, Viola, I saw something rather interesting in the news. Now, we've got crime hotspots in South Africa, as in most other countries in the world. And one of our crime hotspots in the Western Cape in particular is the Hanover Park area. It's one of the very poor communities in the Western Cape. And we've seen reports that the gangs there have made a pact of peace amongst themselves. And in fact, they are handing out food parcels to the community. So they've all called a truce. And I know that the city of Cape Town is very skeptical about it. They're saying, they're not sure that this is authentic. But for now, it seems to be working.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great community spirit.
Yes.
And to be encouraged,
Yeah, I do believe that it's to be encouraged. Look, they've sort of had those, 2 steps forward and sort of 10 steps back. But I do believe that if a community wants to do things the right way and do the right thing, that it needs to be supported and it needs to be guided. There's also some really harrowing stories in terms of the communities, in terms of things not going so well. But I do believe that what we need to be encouraging is sort of active citizenry. One of the things that I remember so clearly was at the start of this, there was a visual, I don't know if you saw it, of all these coffins lined up in Italy. And the caption on that visual was sort of, just in case you thought the coronavirus wasn't something to take seriously. I mean, there was just like these rows and rows of coffins, and it's a visual that stayed with me for so long. And I really think that, if people truly understood that the person that they love could possibly be taken away by this virus, then, it would be taken a lot more seriously. Now, I do recognize, there's a lot of us that didn't grow up privileged, but we've become the privileged. We have to acknowledge that, we've got everything that we need and more. And so we've been able to, sort of get rid of the circumstances we grew up in and are sitting with much better circumstances now. But I do believe that one of the things we need to be doing with the communities where we come from, especially, and where we still have networks and where we're still connected, is to just really take the time to educate people that we understand that the circumstances are difficult, but please try and stay at home and try and just be responsible. Now, it's there's a lot of the rules that some of them don't make sense to me, and I don't always understand everything that's being said, but it's in terms of what the impact is going to be with those kinds of rules. But I do understand that one of the things we've been asked to do is not spread this virus, and for us to be responsible with ourselves, washing our hands and sanitizing and all those good things. And I find that when I'm speaking to certain people, I'm really just trying to emphasize that message. And so I do think wherever we have platforms and networks and wherever we're talking to people, especially when we hear that people are not taking this seriously, I think we have to be responsible and say, take this seriously.
Oh, absolutely. I do want to mention an animation I saw today, earlier today. I think I speak under correction, but I think it was in Germany. Scientists have put together this amazing animation. Now, people kind of think, we mentioned this before in the show, people think going to the is your get out of jail free card and a place to congregate. And I saw this infographic animation where they showed somebody coughing and how far those droplets can spread. They actually did the animation in the shopping aisle of a supermarket, and they were showing how far that all over from one aisle right into the next aisle
Yeah,
because of the air conditioning. We forget about little things like that. So those droplets are staying in the air for much, much longer than we thought. And so that could be another contributing factor towards it spreading. So I think, again, an appeal to people, don't be shopping list. Go to the store, be mindful of the fact that the people that are working in the store are also people working on the front lines, people that are also scared, people that also have families. So be
yeah.
considerate, don't hang around the shopping malls for no reason. Just go with purpose and go back out and get back home.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, I'm just, there's just so much to do, and there's so many opportunities for us to do it. The acts of kindness, the opportunity to just be a lot more positive about our future. It is dire, and it's actually quite scary. I think that's the sort of overwhelming feeling I've been having today. It's just, I'm actually feeling a bit scared. I've got like butterflies in my stomach in terms of just not just my own future, but the future for Shay's future and future of my family. It's actually very scary. It's not an easy thing to sort of put under your belt and just sort of manage and deal with, but it's actually quite difficult. So it's really it's starting to I'm starting to sort of feel overwhelmed as well, in terms of the consequences of the extension of the lockdown, just in terms of your own financial security.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to say welcome to Kim as well. So Kim's weighed in a little bit there on the situation with staff and employers. She says Labour will definitely not allow that, and I'm sure she's referring to our conversation earlier when we were talking about
Yeah,
people being laid off. And she says municipalities are constantly in those negotiations with the employer, and also it's time to look at changing conditions of service. I think that's
yeah,
probably where we are headed, at looking at changing conditions of service. And then the other comment she makes here is, we have too many communities not complying. We need to be responsible and work together. Absolutely.
yeah,
And information is key,
yeah, yeah,
and we need to share. There's still a lot of people living in ignorance. We need to get information out to people and make sure that, because despite the fact every day we've been repeating this, despite the fact that it's a criminal offense in South Africa to share fake news, disinformation, misinformation about the coronavirus, I still see too much fake news flying around in groups and on Facebook. Although I must say Facebook's being extremely bold. They are clamping down on comments coming through in Facebook. I see they're also clamping down on WhatsApp on the amount of shares.
Yeah.
So I think they're limiting, from what I've seen, they're limiting the amount of time something can be shared, and that's a way to control the spread of fake news. And I see that as a good move on the part of Facebook, and one to be applauded. You know, one always comes out quite strongly when they do things wrong, but when
Yes.
people do something right, we want to applaud them for that as well.
As
You
well.
know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
sometimes we can be critical of our government, but you know, they're doing something bold, they're doing something that's right for
Yeah.
the country, and so we want to acknowledge that and work along with them.
Yeah, that's true. I almost want to just get back to, if we can, Brigitte, just come back to one of the comments Kim made. Um, we've spoken about it. We've spoken about the fact that, we talk about how crisis sort of heals opportunity. And I do believe that for a lot of people, there will be opportunities. But I think what's more generally true for just across the board is that crisis always brings change. And I think one of the things we have control over is to start thinking about what we want that change to be. In terms of the employee-employer relationship, our contractual agreements are definitely going to change. I mean, this whole experience is going to change the way employers view things. It's going to change the way, the expectations that employers have of employees, when you can take leave and when you can't take leave, working from home, who's going to cover the expense of data, all the things we've mentioned in the show before. I really think that one of the things we are going to, and I think people are going to start trying to negotiate differently now in terms of salaries, in terms of retrenchment packages, etc. Everybody is going to, I think, just really be, try to come out of this, and everybody's going to start going into survival mode, Brigitte. And what concerns me about that is survival mode usually is triggered by a lot of sort of self-interest and how do I get out of this? Better off than anybody else. And that's really one of the things that I want to warn us against, is that, this is something that's affected everybody in the world. And in South Africa, we are, let's be the South Africans that we want to be proud of, where we are able to work together through these things, negotiate together through these things, so that we all come out of here, sort of just together, and not have people sort of scathed and bleeding in our wake, as we sort of scramble to the top to try and just survive this thing. It's something we're going to have to understand.
I think we're just about out of time, but I think one more thing I would like to mention is that if you haven't yet worked on a strategy to get out of lockdown, now is the time to work on that strategy. If you haven't got a marketing strategy, and I don't think I can emphasize this enough, because it's the first thing that people seem to cut is marketing strategy. You need to work on a marketing strategy right now. You need to keep in touch with your clients. You need to, if you are not if you're not out there right now marketing with sensitivity and not be tone deaf.
Yes.
If you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to carry on in business once it's lifted. Because people are
Absolutely.
going to remember the people that are marketing with sensitivity. Those are the people that are going to be on top of the mind of everyone when we get out of this. So please pay
Absolutely.
attention to your marketing and how you market.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important, because what I suspect is going to happen is, after towards the end of April, the president is going to make an announcement of which industries are going to go back, under very, very strict conditions. And I think we can guess what some of those conditions are: that there is social distancing, that you are, protecting your clients and your employees from the spread of the virus in the workplace. I think we can sort of guess what those conditions will be, but we need to be ready. So you need to be ready for when lockdown is lifted for your specific sector. I'm just guessing. I think something like a lot of our fast food restaurants who have drive-thrus, they might be open, be one of the industries that open first, because you sort of, with the drive-through, there's almost forced social distancing with you being in the car. So those are the kinds of things that I've been trying to sort of scratch my head around, saying which industries will open first, and how will they open. But small businesses need to be ready for if they are part of that value chain, to be ready to go back to work, and they need to have a strategy on how to do it.
Absolutely. And if you're watching the show, please share it. Let us know if you've got a strategy in place, what your plans are moving forward. How are you marketing? Are you marketing? Let us know in the comments. It'd be great to know that. Thank you for watching, everyone. We want to also say thank you.
Thank
We've been
you.
talking in every show about the kind of technologies people have been using. We've been using StreamYards to go live, because it allows you to brand yourself. If you want to know more about StreamYard, or if you want to know about how you use live streaming to market your business, then reach out to us, put a comment down below, and we'll reach out to you afterwards. So from me, Bridgetti Limbanda, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. From Cape Town, with love. Bye-bye.